morning. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose. It's an honor to see you all here this morning on this beautiful rainy day. Let us start our celebration service by standing up and singing together our congregational song, which is called This Is My Heaven. We surrender to the presence of Spirit as we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
From Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander. Love is, without a doubt, the basis of everything. Not some abstract, hard-to-fathom kind of love, but the day-to-day kind that everyone knows. The kind of love we feel when we look at our spouse and our children, or even our animals. In its purest and most powerful form, this love is not jealous or selfish, but unconditional. This is the reality of realities, the incomprehensible, glorious truth of truths that lives and breathes at the core of everything that exists or that ever it will exist. And no remotely accurate understanding of who and what we are can be achieved by anyone who does not know it and embody it in all of their actions. Does this sound unscientific? Well, I beg to differ. I'm back from the other side, and nothing can convince me that this is not only the single most important emotional truth in the universe, but also the single most important scientific truth as well. And so it is.
And so we allow ourselves once again to be still, to know, to rest in the remembrance of the goodness of Spirit, to trust that power and that presence, the I Am presence, which is another name for God. As we breathe and become still, do we need a group cough? Let's all cough together. See how good it feels to give yourself permission just to be. And to give others permission to be who they are in this moment. Because it's all part of the I Am, the sacred I Am that is the truth of our existence. And so let us remember that together as we sing, I am remembering who I am, knowing the truth of the I Am presence for ourselves, but also knowing it for every single being, for the whole universe, for all that exists. I am remembering who I am. Let us remember the divine indwelling presence as we breathe in deeply. And then exhale, gently opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
The secret of life is enjoying the passage of time. Any fool can do it. There ain't nothing to it. Nobody knows how we got to the top of the hill. But since we're on our way down, might as well enjoy the ride. The secret of love is in opening up your heart. It's okay to feel afraid. Just don't let it stand in your way. 'Cause everyone knows that love is the only road. And since we're only here for a while, might as well show some style. Just give it a smile. Isn't it a lovely ride? See us gliding down and sliding down Try not to try too hard. It's just a lovely ride. The secret of time is that time isn't really real. It's just your point of view. So how does it feel for you? Einstein said we could never understand it all. Planets spinning through space, the smile upon your face. Welcome to the human race. Isn't it a lovely ride? We're just sliding down and gliding down. Try not to try so hard. It's just a lovely ride. Yes, isn't it a lovely, lovely ride? See us sliding, gliding, riding down. Try not to try too hard. Just open up your heart. 'Cause love is the only road. It's just a lovely ride. The secret of life is enjoying time. The secret of life is enjoying love. The secret of life is Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Mary, and thank you, band. That was just beautiful, really lovely. We're so fortunate, aren't we? Have all these great musicians coming through, and the great house musicians that we have all the time. Just wonderful. So I wanted to speak today about death and heaven and all kinds of, exciting topics like that. One of the reasons I'm speaking about that is because of Tim Braun, who is coming to our center in a few weeks. Tim Braun is a medium. He speaks to people on the other side. He was highly recommended by someone who attends the center and by one of our sister churches, Westlake Village. And I attended the event last year, and I just wanted to make sure that I could recommend him fully, so I went and had a private session with him as well. And I was convinced that this guy is really communicating with something beyond. It eradicated my skepticism in terms of, mostly because of this specificity, is that a word? Whatever, of what he told me about people in my, everybody here is going, in my family, things that he had no way of knowing and things that I had forgotten about. So I think the most compelling thing about having Tim here that I found was that he really gave a sense of continuity, a continuity of consciousness that is in this life, before this life, and after this life. And so that's one of the reasons I selected this book of the month, which is Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander. I'm wondering if there are people here who have read it already? Yeah, so quite a few of you, yeah. This is a really beautiful book, too. Eben Alexander, for those of you who haven't read it, is a neurosurgeon and a scientist. And he spent most of his life not believing in the afterlife. When his patients would say, I went into this tunnel and I saw this bright light, and he'd be like, yeah, that's just your brain shutting down. That's just brain function. Nothing to write home about, really. And then he had his own experience where he got a very caustic form of viral meningitis or bacterial meningitis. And he went into a coma, and much of his brain was shut down. And he had this experience in the coma that to him when he got back and he looked at what his brain was doing as a neuroscientist, he recognized that what had happened in his experience could not have been caused by the brain. It was something else. And the ultimate conclusion of the book is that there is a consciousness that exists beyond brain. It's like last month when we were talking about Dr. Goswami, when he was here, he was talking about how material science believes that matter creates consciousness, or matter creates everything, and that's upward causation. But we in metaphysical teachings say that consciousness is the source of everything, that consciousness creates everything through downward consciousness. So consciousness is not a product of brain. The brain is a product of consciousness, which is very much like spiritual teachings, how God, Spirit, created the world out of itself. Spirit became matter so that matter could become spirit. There are, of course, skeptics, other scientists that say that this book is not true. I was going to say a different word. This book is not true. And I read some of them, and I was not convinced by their skepticism. Because, first of all, what he says is so universally true. It's not about, he was raised Christian, but it's not about like seeing Jesus in the pearly gates. It's just I guess maybe I'm convinced because it's very much like what we teach about the afterlife, and that it's a continuity, and that there's joy, and that there's transcendence and transformance. The other reason that I believe that it's true is that I actually knew Eben Alexander when I was in North Carolina. If you've read the book, you know he's from North Carolina. And I went to college there, and after college I worked at Duke Hospital for a year, and that's where he was doing his internship. And he was an intern while I was a nurse there, and we worked together. And we weren't close, but he's one of the few names that I remember, oddly. It may have been because one of my friends had an insane crush on him, because he was a really, really, really nice guy, and a really handsome guy, and a really good guy. So I don't see any reason for him to make up this stuff. So let me read to you a little bit about what he says about the afterlife. I selected a quote from the book. And he says that, "I saw birds or angels, but neither of these words do justice to the beings themselves, which were quite simply different from anything I have known on this planet. A sound, huge and booming like a glorious chant, came down from above, and I wondered if the winged beings were producing it. Again, thinking about it later, it occurred to me that the joy of these creatures as they soared along was such that they had to make this noise. That if the joy didn't come out of them this way, then they would simply not otherwise be able to contain it. The sound was palpable and almost material, like a rain that you can feel on your skin but that doesn't get you wet. Seeing and hearing were not separate in this place where I now was. I could hear the visual beauty of the silvery bodies, and I could see the surging, joyful perfection of what they sang. Everything was distinct, yet everything was also part of everything else, like the rich and intermingled designs on a Persian carpet or a butterfly's wing." Does that sound like anything that you're familiar with about everything being, one? And, it's very much like this teaching, right? And wouldn't that be a glorious thing to be one of those beings that is so filled with joy that you can't even contain it? And to recognize that everything is like a butterfly's wing. Not only a butterfly's wing, which is a miracle in itself, but everything is like a butterfly's wing. Everything is connected. Everything is perfect. Everything is divine. So the name of my talk this morning is Prove Heaven Here. And that's because of the Science of Mind teaching. Because in the Science of Mind teaching, Ernest Holmes says that heaven and hell are merely states of mind, and that heaven and hell are caused by our perception. That's what we perceive and what we tell ourselves about what we perceive. And that our most important work on the planet Earth is to create heaven here and now. I'm paraphrasing, but that's really what we are supposed to do, is create heaven on earth. Create heaven on earth so that there is no separation between us and God, and no separation between us and all of the other beautiful beings on this planet, human, animal, plant, rocks, trees, otherwise. Recognizing that we are all one, that we are all part of that beautiful Persian tapestry, or part of what he described as the butterfly's wing, that it's all perfect and it's all beautiful. I had my own little experience of heaven on earth the other day. It was quite unexpected because it was something that I do every single day. And this was on a morning, I think my husband was out of town, and I was in bed, sleeping a little bit later than I usually do. And our cat, Molly, when she gets insistent about eating her breakfast. She comes and she stands on me and she meows. And so she did. Oddly, the dogs don't care. They're like, whatever, we'll eat whenever. But the cat came and stood on me and meowed, so I got up and I went and did a few things, and then I fed Molly, and she finished her meal, and I went and I got a drink of water, and I was standing there drinking my water, and Molly did what she does every morning, in that she asked for second breakfast. Sometimes third breakfast as well, but this was second breakfast. And so I got out the cat food and I gave her second breakfast, and as I gave it, I spooned it into her bowl, and as she went for it, I just patted her on the back of her little tail and said, "You're a good kitty, Molly." And she did what cats do. Her elevator butt, you know what that is? Their little butt goes like that. In case this side wants to see it, it goes like that. Sorry, that might have been oversharing, okay. Anyway, it reminded me of a haiku that I had read. I think it's from the New York Times, but I had read it on the internet, and I'm going to read it for you. It's written by a cat, evidently, and it says, "You must scratch me there, yes, above my tail. Behold, elevator butt." And the thought of that made me so happy that all of a sudden I recognized that Molly and her elevator butt and my patting her was just loving love in that moment. And that shifted something in me. Through some process of grace, that shifted something in me, so that I was able to look at the whole world for like a whole half hour, and seeing that everything was loving love. I looked out at the window and I saw these beautiful trumpet vines that my husband has planted, and saw that the hummingbirds, these trumpet vines were offering themselves freely without any thought of reward to the hummingbirds. And the hummingbirds were taking their nectar freely, giving and receiving in this beautiful cycle. And I thought of our compost bin in the backyard, where our red worms are devouring the food scraps that were part of food that fed us, and the miracle of our bodies digesting food, and how that was loving love. And I thought about how I was about to go out and take the dogs for a hike, and I was going to get in my car, and I was going to turn the key, and the car was going to start. And that was loving love. That's the miracle of science. That's science saying, I love you. I am starting your car for you, and I'm going to get you where you need to go through scientific principles that I know not of, such as momentum and ignition and combustion, or whatever happens inside of a car. And it's so beautiful that, did I say the wrong thing? It's so beautiful that does combustion mean that it blows up? Oh, okay. Cancel. Okay, so all of these beautiful things are happening for us, and yet, most of the time, we don't see them. We walk sightless among miracles, as the Jewish prayer says. We walk sightless among miracles. Now, those of you who have been attending here for a long time, that I probably do this too much, but you know that I can't possibly talk about walking sightless among miracles without speaking about my favorite play in the entire world, which is Our Town. Most beautiful play ever written, as far as I'm concerned. And in case you haven't seen it, I'll kind of give you the gist of it. It takes place in New Hampshire, and actually the address of the play is Grover's Corner, New Hampshire, state of New Hampshire, United States, North America. Somebody writes this on a letter in the play: North America, the world, the Milky Way galaxy, the universe. So right then and there, you know that it's a universal play. It's about all of us, and it's about the everyday things that happen to people. And in Act 3, one of the main characters, Emily, she's 26, and she's been recently married, and she dies giving birth to a child. And she goes to a graveyard, and she's there with the other dead people, and they're talking to each other in this play. And she says that she feels like she missed something when she was on Earth, and she misses Earth, and she wants to go back, and the dead people advise her not to do it because it's going to be too painful. It's going to be too heart-wrenching for her to go back. But she insists, and the stage manager, also known as God, says, okay, I'm going to give you one day. Pick any day will do. Any ordinary day will do. And so she picks her 12th birthday to go back. And she goes back to her home on her 12th birthday, and people are bustling around. Her mother's cooking, and her brother is doing whatnot, and her father is, I don't know, off. He's a doctor. Maybe he's off delivering a baby or something. But she keeps saying to her mother, please, just look at me. Just look at me. Everybody's moving so fast. It's going by so fast. I can't possibly. You don't know what you're missing here. And then she says finally that it's too painful for her. It's too painful for her to be here where everybody is walking sightless among miracles, where everyone cannot see the glory that is before them. And she says to the stage manager, I have to go back. I have to go back. This is too painful. I can't stand it. And I'm going to actually read to you the speech that she says when she says goodbye, if I can. She says, it goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize all that was going on in life, and we never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my grave. But first, wait, one more look. Goodbye world, goodbye Grover's Corners, Mama, Papa, goodbye to clocks ticking, and Mama's sunflowers, and food and coffee, and new iron dresses, and hot baths, and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you are too beautiful for anyone to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute. And the stage manager says, no, saints and poets maybe. They do some. Sorry if I made you cry. But it's so beautiful what we have here. It's so amazing. And how can we realize life? We may not be able to realize it every moment. We may only be able to realize it through moments of grace like I experienced. We'll try and find ways to realize it. Is it gratitude? Is it grace? Is it elevator butt? If you don't have a cat, you have to run out and get one so you can elevator butt. I don't want us to miss our lives. This moment right here, right now, where some of us are blowing our noses and we're sitting in our sacred sanctuary with beautiful people, this is important. So how do we make ourselves available for this type of pristine awareness more and more so that we can create heaven here on earth in the present moment? Well, the stage manager, aka God, in our town said that the saints and the poets maybe know how to do that. And so I turned to a poet that I love, Mary Oliver, and she gives 3 instructions for living a life. The first is, pay attention. The second is, be astonished. And the third is, tell about it. So let's go over those one by one. Pay attention. Ask yourself honestly, what is it that you normally pay attention to? If this was a class, I'd have people shout out, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for that here. I think that a lot of us are preoccupied with things that we don't want to think about. We're preoccupied with worries about ourselves, our lives, our health, our finances. We're preoccupied with worries about the world. We're preoccupied about our future. We may be feeling guilty and preoccupied about the past. What if we could be preoccupied with something else? Because not only the preoccupation is the problem, is that we tell ourselves that the worry is helping and that it's real, that it's the only reality. And you know what this is like? I was trying to think of an analogy of this that most people, I hope, can relate to. I was talking about my cat Molly before, and just last week I had to take her to the vet for her checkup and her shots, and I had to put her in a cat carrier, right? She was a bit preoccupied and worried. You know, if you've ever put a cat in a cat carrier, all of a sudden they grow like 8 more limbs and they're clinging onto things and like, no, don't put me in there. That's the abyss of hell. I'm not going in there. And that was her reality in that moment. She was not able to see the bigger picture of helpfulness, that I was going to take her to somebody that was going to help her and give her her rabies shot and examine her and make sure that her heart was working really well and that it was going to be fine and she was going to come home and have, you know, 4th breakfast and it was all going to be good. But I think that's a lot of what we're like, that we're so busy telling ourselves these horrible thoughts and then, or even anxious thoughts. They don't even have to be on the horrible thought scale. It's just, we're telling ourselves these things, and then we're telling ourselves that they're real, while not observing that there is a bigger picture behind whatever it is we're thinking. The thoughts that you are thinking are not necessarily real just because you're thinking them. I would bargain to say, or think to say, that they are always part of a bigger picture. So perhaps when we're caught in a cycle of creating hell on earth with our consciousness, because Ernest Holmes said that we create heaven or hell with our consciousness, with our thoughts and with our perceptions. Perhaps if we can just develop the capacity to notice when we're caught in one of those cycles and then step back and say, oh, wait a minute, is what I'm thinking really true? Is it the whole truth? Is there a bigger picture here? That is paying attention. That is paying attention. And if we're going to pay attention to the challenging and negative things in our lives, which we do, I think we have to create some conscious time to pay attention to some of the incredibly beautiful things in our lives as well, because there is much beauty around us all of the time. We just have to open our eyes and pay attention and see it. And when we see it, then we get to be astonished. Have any of you seen that bumper sticker that says, if you're not in a huge state of outrage, you're not paying attention? Something like that, right? And there are two women that came and sang here, a couple of women that sang this song that was something like, if you're not in a state of awe and wonder, then you're not paying attention. What a difference, right? Which would you rather be, in a state of outrage or in a state of awe and wonder? And the thing is that there may be things to be outraged about, but how much more creative we are if we are in a state of awe and wonder, seeing that whatever we're outraged about is part of a bigger picture, and that is part of the earth turning and the universe moving to create something new. It is part of the compost cycle of life, right? Right? Am I right? Okay, good, good. Need a little validation there, you know? But I do believe it. I believe it really, really, truly. And there's awe and wonder all around us all of the time. You know, if you ask yourself, if I ask myself, when I came in here this morning, I don't know that I was in a state of awe and wonder. I have a lot of stuff going on right now personally and in the church, just nothing bad, but just super busy. And I forget to look. Like when I'm here, even during the week, I forget to look at what we have here. Oh my goodness, what a capacity for awe and wonder. Look at this incredible building and think of the hands that created that window and that created that beautiful sign. A volunteer did that for us and created that window with a crack in it. And even the crack is beautiful too, because that's where the light gets in. And speaking of flaws and cracks and everything, you know, if you look at that ceiling, if you look at that ceiling up there, this is one of my favorite flaws in the church. You'll see that there's one tile that stands out, that's lighter than all of the others, so that's a flaw. But it's not really a flaw. That was a tile that fell down one day, thankfully not on a Sunday. And we had a volunteer who, he was so dedicated, and he passed away several years ago, but he was so dedicated that he went and he took photos of those tiles and he replicated the tile, and the colors were just slightly off, and somehow he went up there in the ceiling, which scares the you-know-what out of me, and he put it in there. And so every time I look at that tile now, I think of Steve Morris, this beautiful, dedicated volunteer who died too soon, you know? So the point of that is that even our flaws, even the things that we think are flawed, maybe they're like that tile. Maybe they're a symbol of grace that has either happened or that is waiting to happen. And we can be astonished at that. We can be astonished at everything that is happening in our lives. We can make the way for astonishment, I think, by simply asking, stopping, pausing, and saying, what is astonishing in this moment? Or if that's too challenging, what is the gift in this moment? The gift may be that you're not willing to see the gift, then make that the gift. Just start wherever you are. But what is the gift in this moment? And then the third thing, tell about it. Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. You have such a gift by being part of this philosophy. I believe that this philosophy is so inclusive and so beautiful and so loving that it can change the world, that it can bring hope and joy to other beings. So I encourage all of you, and you're probably doing this already, but to do it even more and to recognize that as you do it, you're making a difference, to bring this philosophy into your personal lives, and to bring the things that we're talking about today into your personal lives, the paying attention and not believing in your own thoughts and being astonished at what happens. Bring it into your own lives and let your life tell about it. Let your life be a shining example of the grace and the glory that we teach here. Because really, when it comes down to it, there is only love. There is only love, loving love. And if the whole world believed that, your life would be incredibly different, and the life of the entire planet, all beings, would be incredibly different. Because it starts with belief. It starts with belief, but it doesn't end with belief. It also starts with action and living as if the truth is true. So live as if the truth of amazement and astonishment and love and grace and heaven here on earth is true, and see what happens. See what changes in your life. See what shifts for the planet. Because if a critical mass of us are doing it, there's that tipping point, and things suddenly, seems like it's suddenly, but it's not. Things start to get better for everyone, and everyone is blessed. Can we collectively believe that together? It seems hard to believe sometimes when the news looks difficult or when challenging things are happening to people. But I've seen it. I've seen it in difficult situations. I've seen it when I've worked in cancer hospitals. I've seen it when I worked at Duke with Eben Alexander. I saw it when I was in the slums of India. There is beauty and power and astonishment everywhere. And we have a responsibility to use our perception to bring it forth. So that's what I'm asking you to do this morning, to pay attention, to be astonished, and to tell about it. And in so doing, you create heaven on earth. I think that there are miracles everywhere. And the more we practice this, the more we get to see it, the more cognizant we get to be of the miracles that are happening all around us. I personally find it a miracle that 38 years ago, I was working at Duke Hospital as a nurse, a new graduate nurse, and I was calling up Dr. Alexander and saying, I can't read your handwriting, And here I am 37, 38 years later talking about his book in a church. I never, ever dreamed that would happen at that time. Can you imagine? I had no inkling of, I think someday I'm going to be working at a church in Ventura, and I'm going to be talking about a book that this guy hasn't even written yet. So the future holds magnificence for you, whether you know it or not. And love is loving love, whether you know it or not. But the key is to know it. And then your life is so much better, and so is everybody else's. I'm going to close with a quote from Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander. In his afterlife experience, he came up with, he feels like, is the basic message of life. And it is, you are loved and cherished. Let's say that together. I am loved and cherished. I have nothing to fear. There is nothing wrong I can do. Okay, and that message boils down to one sentence. I am loved. And that sentence boils down to one word. It is simply love. Yes. Let us love now. Let us pray. And so I turn within to honor the power and the glory and the grace of love that is here among us always, but that is perceptually real this morning as we turn our attention to it, as we connect with it and unify with it. I am so grateful for this presence of love that has brought all of us here today on this beautiful rainy day by divine appointment to share in the fellowship and the learning and the expansion of hearts. And I'm so grateful to know that our work together makes a difference in the world. And so, in the spirit of gratitude, I just speak the word of truth to know that we are one with God, and that our lives have been uplifted and transformed here in this time together. That any thoughts of disease or illness or lack or uncertainty, all of those are transformed into knowing the grace and the miracle that is behind that appearance. That anything that seems unlike love is really love trying to escape, trying to be seen, trying to be known, the hidden treasure that longs to be known. And so this morning we commit together to being the vessels for that transformation through our willingness to shift our perception and to call forth love in every single moment. Together we commit to paying attention, to being astonished, and to talking about it. And we know that our attentiveness, our astonishment, and our right and noble speech and action is the force and the power and the grace and the love that makes a difference for all beings. And so I'm so grateful to be able to participate in this uplifting and heart-opening work, so grateful for this teaching, so grateful for the transformation that I know has occurred here this morning by virtue of our spiritual work together. I bless this spiritual center as I bless all paths to God, churches, temples, synagogues, mosques, ashrams. I bless fundamentalists, atheists. I bless all beings because all beings are a blessing. And with a heart that is so filled with blessedness and gratitude, I release these words into the mystery, and together we say, and so it is. I am
By the future you picked, come on down. All those rules apply when you're high in the sky. So come on down, come on down. We're coming down to the ground. There's no better place to go. We got snow upon the mountains, we got the rivers down below. We're coming down to the ground to hear the birds sing in the trees. We all will be looked after like the seeds out on the breeze. Did you think you'd escaped from routine by changing the script and the scene? Despite all you made of it, we're always afraid of the change. You got a lot on your chest. Come to be my guest. Come on down, come on down. We're coming down to the ground. There's no better place to be. We got love and life and laughter. We know the truth will set us free. We're coming down to the now to hear the birds sing in the trees. We will be looked after. We send the seeds out on the breeze. Like a big fish in the ocean, we felt at home in the sea. We learned to live off the good land. We learned to climb up a tree. Then we got up on 2 legs and we wanted to fly. We're coming into our birthright. We set ourselves high. We're coming down to the ground. There's no better place to go. We got snow upon the mountains, got the rivers down below. We're coming down to the now to hear the birds sing in the trees. We all will be looked after like the seeds out on the breeze. We're coming down, bringing heaven to earth with new priorities and extraordinary qualities. We're coming down, a new heaven and a new earth with love and life and laughter. We're ready for rebirth. We're